Welcome everybody again to our 2023 Crop Insurance Strategies and Outlook featuring Watson Associates Economic Consultants. Before we begin, just a small disclaimer that all the information that you will see today is presented in good faith and should not be intended for investment, tax, or legal advice and for such purposes. For our agenda today, welcome introductions will be done by myself, then will be followed by Alex Offrendahl, Managing Partner with Watson Associates, as well as Debbie Schwartz with Watson Associates, and then our own Nicole Ingram with Growers LLP. So our first presenter will be Alex Offrendahl, is a managing partner for Watson Associates, an agricultural and economics consulting firm specializing in crop insurance and agricultural policy. Alex grew up on a small farm and ranch in northern Montana, raising spring wheat, barley, and registered Black Angus cattle. He studied ag economics at Montana State University and Iowa State University and completed graduate school at Kansas State University. Oh, sorry, everybody. Alex led the teams that created the fastest growing crop insurance programs available to our growers, including margin protection, enhanced coverage options, and many other federal and private crop insurance products for a wide variety of crops, literally from apples to zucchinis. Alex is passionate about helping producers and make better decisions to make better use of farm programs and protect themselves with better crop insurance choices. His research interests are production economics, price modeling, and agricultural statistic analysis, which makes him a lot of fun at parties. Our second presenter today is Debbie Schwartz. Is also from Watson Associates, where they develop and demonstrate data-driven risk management strategies for agricultural leaders. Debbie and the Watts team do this by providing training, services, resources, and technologies that revolutionize effectiveness, increases market share, and capitalizes on growth potential. Debbie's career in the insurance industry has included positions in sales, training, and business development. She understands the life of our producers, having grown up on a farm in Illinois. Her unique abilities to take complex topics and make them relatable to average producers have made her a valuable resource for crop insurance professionals across the country. While not helping sales professionals and their producers increase profits, Debbie enjoys photography, cheering on the St. Louis Cardinals, working in the yard, and entertaining her nieces and nephews. And lastly, we have Nicole Ingram, is a senior marketing agent with crop growers. Nicole has been working in the crop growers for the past 7 years, providing risk management plans to growers in northern New York. Her number one goal in her career is to make a positive impact on the agricultural community. She feels her role at crop growers is able to reach this goal and looks forward to helping producers manage risk. So with that, I will turn this over to Alex, who will be our first presenter today.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for choosing to share your lunch hour with us. Today, we've got a number of topics that we want to spend some time with. I should note that we had a conversation with the crop growers crop insurance staff yesterday where we talked about the Farm Bill stuff, and you're going to get the 7-minute version of what took us over an hour yesterday. We've tried to boil things down to a couple of fine points on what you can expect from the Farm Bill, but today I wanted to start with a conversation about weather, and put simply, we're setting up for a pretty weird year in the Northeast, and I think that's a conversation that is going to be on a lot of farmers' minds as they start to make some of their planning decisions over the next couple of weeks and months. And then we're going to talk about Farm Bill. I'll talk a little bit about the state of policy and the debate today. This is something that we're going to have unfolding over the course of most of the next year. The Farm Bill expires in September for the 2018 bill, so we're going to talk about who the movers and shakers are and what some of the big issues that we're seeing early on in this debate can be expected to be for the next Farm Bill. So I want to start with a discussion of the temperature outlook. And this is the forecast that USDA and our friends at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration released for expectations for February, March, and April. This is a 3-month outlook. And historically, it's had roughly the same level of accuracy as what we've seen from the Old Farmer's Almanac. It's right sometimes, and it's provided at least a look at what we can expect from a climate perspective on precipitation and temperature in the areas that we are interested in. So if you can see the mouse in the Northeast, we're looking at an expectation that February, March, and April will be warmer than has historically typically been the case. At the same time, there are parts of the area that we can look for additional precip relative to our traditional expectations. And that's particularly true in the far western part of the areas that we serve. So the expectation is that going into planting season, we could have a little bit earlier than normal planting season with above average soil temperatures, and that parts of the territory could look to go in with above normal precip. But there's also some potential there that could also lead to issues with prevented planting, particularly in the far western part of the areas that we serve. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the expectations for precip for the month we're in right now. I think that we can all agree that parts of this looked pretty reasonable. So this is a forecast that was released in the last day of 2022, and it was intended to be a projection for expectations for the month we're in right now. So we're 2 months into January right now, and I want to draw your attention in particular to the projection for California. We'll circle back to that, and I know that there's no California listeners on the line today, but when we talk about these projections being all over the map, you'll note that dark green area that surrounds the Sierra Nevadas and the Central Valley of California. I think they could safely say nailed it on that one, as not only are we above normal precip there, but we're record breaking. We'll talk about some of the events that have struck the Northeast, but I think that projection for above normal precip in the western part of Pennsylvania and the western part of New York has certainly seen itself come through as well. So if you need something to validate your faith in some of what we've seen for the forecast, I think you can say that they did okay, at least for the first half of January, based on the projections that they were making. So we need to talk a little bit about the drought outlook. And here I want to show you just exactly what some of the precip that we've received across the country has done. This will have important implications for the pricing that we can expect to see going into price discovery. That is the entire month of February for crop insurance, for corn and soybeans in particular, and some of the other important crops throughout the areas that we're talking to today. So the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the mega drought in the West, at least from the California perspective, has alleviated itself substantively. Tomorrow we'll get an update on this drought overview, and we expect to see the drought areas within California and New Mexico disappear very nearly completely. You'll also note that on the far western edge of our territory, that meaningful and persistent drought that we saw in the western part of Ohio and a couple of other parts of our territory has shrunk substantively with the precip that we received over the last several weeks. So that means that planting conditions and soil moisture have more or less improved over a large swath of the country. But let's talk about the states that are going to move the market in terms of expected pricing for the next year. Here we can see that the drought area has also shrunk somewhat in parts of Minnesota, parts of Wisconsin, particularly Ohio and Indiana and Illinois. Those are major production areas, and improving soil moisture conditions there is definitely going to improve the prospects for the crop and could put some downward pressure on pricing. I know we're a long ways from even planting this crop, much less harvesting it, but it is the sort of thing that the market's going to have their eyes on. From here, I want to just show you a chart, and I think this is telling for just how big the precip events that we've seen in California have been. We are currently sitting at, and these are the snow moisture equivalent charts at all-time records for the year to date in both the north, central, and southern parts of California. And to give you some context, I pulled the same chart from the snow measuring station on Mount Mansfield there in Vermont, the highest point in Vermont, and one of the few actual active snow monitoring stations in all of the Northeast. You all will recall that the western part of our area, particularly the city of Buffalo, saw the snowiest time period on record in December and is well above normal on precip. But the snow conditions as we move east within our territory have not been nearly as good. Above normal temperatures mean that we are currently sitting at the fourth smallest amount of snow for this day that we've had in recorded history. And you can see there are a lot of lines on that chart. So the bottom line is we're shaping up for a weird weather year in the Northeast with big differences from the west to the east of our northeastern region. From there, I want to talk about the Farm Bill outlook, and I'm going to make it very clear that our overall message here is stay tuned. At this point, we have some guesstimates on where things sit and what we can expect, and we'll talk about who the players are going to be, but it's far too early to make any sort of meaningful predictions on what the ultimate policy that comes out of this debate is going to be. I want to start with differentiating policy from politics. I think a lot of the folks who are covering the Farm Bill today have emphasized the politics side heavily, and it does play a role. But today I'm going to leave the politics out of it and try and focus on the implications for policy, the actual pieces of legislation that are likely to go forward and what they could mean for farmer decision making. So let's start with the House Ag Committee. We know that the chairman and ranking member will be Mr. Thompson and Mr. Scott. Mr. Thompson's the first chairman from Pennsylvania in 170 years. And this is, in general, very good news for Northeast agriculture. Having a chairman who actually cares about issues that are relevant in the Northeast could mean a lot in terms of adding value to the Farm Bill debate, particularly important for dairy and for silage, to a lesser extent for some of the specific environmental issues that are important to the Northeast. Having that gentleman as a chairman will be useful. It's also important to note that Mr. Scott was the previous chairman before the Democrats lost the majority in the House. And so as a result, we've got some fairly experienced hands in leadership of the Ag Committee. Republicans announced just yesterday their membership for the committee. The Democrats haven't made those announcements yet, but these are the members of the House Ag Committee. And on the Republican side, and I've highlighted the members who have been part of this committee the last time we passed a farm bill, which was for the 2018 farm bill. Mr. Lucas was the chairman of this committee. Historically, he was the chair during the creation of the 2014 farm bill. So having him back on the Ag Committee provides another seasoned hand for what is overall a fairly inexperienced group, and a group that lends hard to the South in terms of the experience on the Republican side. Adding Mr. Lucas, also a Southern member, but an experienced hand, should give them some additional wherewithal as this process moves forward. On the Senate side, the chairwoman was and will be Debbie Stabenow. She announced her retirement at the end of her term in 2024. This will be her fourth farm bill. She is an extremely seasoned hand who will lead this effort forward. John Bozeman from Arkansas has been the ranking member on the Senate Ag Committee for some time. He really thought he'd get the gavel, but of course the Republicans failed to win a majority in the Senate. He will service those interests on the Republican side with a lot of experience. We had the first Farm Bill listening session on Saturday up in Harrisburg, and some of the issues that came out were very milk-centric, but a lot of discussion about year-round guest worker programs and support on that side. So Senator Stabenow has said for her own part, while Mr. Thompson is out leading sessions on discussion and will take a run at writing the first draft of the bill, the Senate committee is going to focus on oversight of all of the titles. So here is a summary of the 2018 Farm Bill by spending. You can see that more than 3/4 of every dollar that we spend under the current Farm Bill is spent on nutrition. And the three major aspects that are direct support for production agriculture are crop insurance, being the biggest, commodity programs, and conservation. Each of those are expected to have their own sort of internal discussions and debates as we go forward, but the big fight is going to be around how much of the total dollars available end up getting spent on nutrition. The Democrats at this point have made it clear that they don't want to see cuts in nutrition. The more fiscally minded Republicans would like to see cuts in overall spending, and if you're going to cut spending, nutrition is where all of the money is. That could make for a difficult debate. Debbie's going to spend some time talking to you about the ARC PLC choice and some tools that are available to you as members of the Northeastern Farm Credit Consortium and those who work with crop growers, crop insurance agents. But I just want to highlight for you that the election deadline for your ARC PLC choice, the last one authorized under the 2018 Farm Bill, is March 15th. And that ARC is sort of like an area-based revenue program. Debbie will talk about the details, whereas PLC, on the other hand, is a price-based coverage based on a target price. As we discussed, the nutrition title is where most of the money in the Farm Bill is. Over 40% of the dollars that are spent on nutrition programs go directly to children, a meaningful portion of those school-age children, But as you can see, the spending on nutrition has absolutely exploded in recent years with some updates that have been made. And then, of course, with the inflation situation that we've dealt with over the last year, and then some of the disruptions that we saw with the COVID situation. As a result, total spending in the Farm Bill is way above where our Congress expected it to be when that bill passed. And the level of funding and what's sustainable will probably be the central aspect of this debate. There are some other issues that are being discussed, particularly a margin-based coverage. Corn and soybeans this fall will be offered a margin-based crop insurance policy for the first time in the Northeast. And I think that's something that's going to be worth talking about. But there'll also be meaningful debates about what the nature of commodity-based programs are going to be and what role, if any, climate-based initiatives will find themselves into the conservation title. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to Debbie, who is going to talk to you a little bit about your ARC and PLC choices and some tools that are available. I see that there is a question balloon flashing, so I may jump on the chat and see if I can address that while Debbie does her thing. Thanks, everybody. Debbie, I think you're muted.
Can you hear me now? All right. Yeah. Thanks, Alex. All right. I think I forgot to hit the right button there. So I have the privilege of talking about ARC and PLC in that decision that is coming up, as Alex mentioned, here on March 15th. Hopefully you can see my screen okay. And we'll just move on there. Okay. So yeah, ARC and PLC. What does this mean for us? So I'm going to spend my time here talking about this agriculture risk coverage, also known as ARC, and PLC, or price loss coverage. Certainly, while these programs are the responsibility of the Farm Services Agency, or FSA, we understand that the ARC and PLC decision can impact your overall risk management strategy. So I think of us as walking on a tightrope when it comes to risk management. If we stumble and fall, we certainly want something there, a safety net to catch us. And ARC and PLC are a few of the safety nets that are available to help us if we come upon disaster struggling kind of years. I don't know about you, but I certainly want a safety net that is close to the risk management areas that we're at, and that's where crop insurance certainly can come into play. So we'll talk about some of the differences between ARC and PLC and why these free FSA programs often give you what you pay for. So let's dig into PLC, price loss coverage, versus ARC, the agriculture risk coverage, and I'll look at it more at the 30,000 foot level. So as Alex mentioned, the 2014 Farm Bill allowed producers to make a election for these one of these two free disaster programs at FSA. Again, you'll hear them referred to as ARC and PLC. As Alex mentioned, PLC is a price loss program, and the ARC is an area-based revenue program, which includes a price component and a yield component. I'll highlight both of them for you here. We'll start with the PLC, the price loss coverage. As mentioned, it does provide price risk only. For PLC to pay, this national marketing year average price has to be below the Farm Bill reference price. And those reference prices were outlined in the actual Farm Bill language. That national marketing year average price is going to track crop harvest from the time of harvest through the next crop year. And so those payments, if there's a payment for PLC or ARC for that matter, those payments do not happen until the 2024 crop year. But you can see the reference prices for corn, we're at $3.70. That's according to the Farm Bill. Soybeans is listed at $8.40. And you can see the future prices right now on corn, we're somewhere around the $6 mark, and soybeans were around $14. So we're a long way away from what those reference prices are as listed in the Farm Bill when that Farm Bill was set back in 2014. Now, PLC is going to pay on 85% of the base acres that you have at FSA. Crop insurance, on the other hand, pays on 100% of your planted acres. Certainly, having those base acres is great. If you have a lot of base acres and maybe no planted acres, you can still participate in the ARC or PLC program. But if you have a lot of planted acres, which a lot of producers have, and those acres may be a lot more, substantially more than your base acres at FSA, these programs may be less attractive than what crop insurance has to offer. The kicker here, selecting the PLC, the price loss coverage, does allow you to add the supplemental coverage option, or SCO, to your crop insurance package, which could be a good consideration for many producers across the country. And so I would encourage you to work with your team there at Farm Credit East and Crop Growers to look at what the SCO has to offer. Here we have the reference prices for PLC for many of the other commodities. Again, keep in mind that for PLC to pay, that national marketing year average price has to fall below these prices that are listed in the Farm Bill. Now, these national marketing year average prices are the average for the nation, not what you're marketing there and what you receive locally for your commodities. So the corn example, as I mentioned, we're at a $3.70 price for the reference price according to the Farm Bill, and so the national marketing year price would have to fall below that before we would see payments. Moving on to ARC, the agriculture risk coverage. There's actually two versions of ARC. There's a county version and there's an individual version. The county version is certainly more popular. It's going to pay on 85% of those base acres at FSA, just like the PLC. The individual ARC pays on only 65% of the base acres at FSA, and that individual program looks at all of your farm numbers, not just individual farm number by farm number. So something to keep in mind there. But in certain situations, the individual does make sense, even though it pays on less base acres. ARC, or agriculture risk coverage, is a revenue type of program, an area-based program, and it's going to include a price and a revenue, or a price and a yield component in that calculation. Again, we're using the national marketing year average price here, but it's going to use what's called an Olympic average, where they look at a 5-year period, they kick out the high year, they kick out the low year, and average the last 3. When it comes to the yield component of the calculation, again, they're using that Olympic average, where they remove the high, remove the low, and average the last 3. And those are based on FSA numbers, which may or may not match what's happening on the crop insurance side. The supplemental coverage option, as I mentioned with the PLC election, is not available if you elect ARC. So again, not available if you elect ARC on the supplemental coverage option. And in fact, there could be a penalty, or is a penalty, for the SCO if you buy SCO and have ARC on your crop insurance. And so we don't want you to run into any headaches there. Certainly work with your crop grower's agent, those representatives, to make sure you're in compliance and don't run into any penalties. A few other things to note when it comes to these elections. This is a Farm Services Agency FSA program, so the signups happen at FSA. The deadline is listed there, March 15th, for the 2023 crop year. The decisions are made at the landowner level. So for those of you that rent farm ground, we would encourage you to collaborate with your landowners on these elections to make sure that you avoid any crop insurance penalties, especially when it comes to purchasing things like the supplemental coverage option. And again, your crop grower's representative can assist you with that. Typically, producers make their election by commodity. They say, hey, I'm going to put all my corn in this program, all my soybeans in that program, my wheat in program X. But you can elect one program. Let's say you go ARC County on your corn, and you could go PLC on your soybeans. You could also break that down by farm number if you have multiple farm numbers. You could take one farm number, put that in ARC, and take a second farm number and move it into PLC. The decision is up to the landowner. Again, that decision is due there by March 15th. And I should mention that you need to go into FSA to sign up. Typically, the language says that you have to sign up. If you do not sign up, you will be put in the PLC program. However, we found that some FSA offices are going to administer that rule a little differently. So some of the FSA offices take your 2022 election and they roll it forward into 2023. I would encourage you to go in and verify the election that you have, make sure it's exactly what you want, and you can request this FSA 156EZ form to verify those elections. your crop growers representative may ask you for a copy of that 156EZ form just to make sure that everything matches what you think you signed up for. Again, the payments, if there are any, those will not be made until the fall of 2024. So keep that in mind as you're making these elections. And also remember that these payments are really meant to be disaster programs. And so I always often look at those as a bonus, not as a guarantee or an absolute. So I ran a few examples here for you. I'm going to begin with a couple of examples for Cortland County, New York. I also have a couple of Vermont examples here. We'll start with the 2022 crop year because that one is not finished yet. And we looked at a bushel scenario where we had just an average year, 136 bushel as the area county average. And I said, what if we had a marketing year average price of somewhere around $6.70? That's potentially where we're at here. And as you can see, as the math pencils out, there's no payment for ARC or PLC. The reason for that, on the PLC side, we're well above that reference price of 370, so no payment on PLC, and our yields really are not low enough and due to the high prices for ARC County to come into play, so no overall payment for either program. Moving on to the 2023 crop year, again, we're just going to make some guesstimates here, but let's say that we had a crop year like 2015 and we raised 120 bushel average instead of that 136 that we just looked at in the last example. And let's say that the national marketing year average price falls to $5. Again, we fall in the same scenario where there's no ARC or PLC payment. However, there are a number of scenarios where that supplemental coverage option could come into play, as you see here. And again, remember, if you do go with the supplemental coverage option on your crop insurance, you will need to elect the price loss coverage or the PLC at FSA to be eligible and avoid those penalties. So again, some good options there that you can work with your crop growers representative to explore. Moving on to soybeans, still staying in Cortland County, New York. For the 2022 crop year, again, I just ran kind of an average year, 46 bushel soybeans, marketing year average price of $10.50. We're in a similar situation, no ARC or PLC payment due to those high prices, average yields, overall nothing from this particular program, but you're probably making your money off of the higher prices that we're experiencing and the average to above average yields. Looking at the 2023 crop year for soybeans, I said, well, let's again go back to 2015 and look at a scenario where we have a 35 bushel yield that comes into play. And let's say those national marketing year average prices move to $10.50, the same as I had in the previous example. In this scenario, you can see that we have a slight ARC County payment coming in at about 23 cents per payment acre. And remember, again, ARC only pays on 85% of those base acres at FSA. PLC still doesn't trigger because it's that 1050 is above that reference price of 840, but there is a substantial amount of supplemental coverage option that could come into to play there and certainly support you on the crop insurance side. Let's look at Vermont, turn the tables here and switch gears. This is Franklin County, Vermont. Again, for 2022, I just ran an average scenario, 119 bushels on corn. And for those of you that work in silage tonnage, that calculates out to about 17.85 ton of silage. And we have, let's say we have a national marketing year average price of $6.70. Again, probably no payment coming on the ARC or PLC side. Moving on to the 2023 crop year for soybeans in Franklin County, Vermont. If we look at, I used a 100 bushel yield here. In 2019, the county yield was 87 reported by the Farm Services Agency. In 2017, it was a 124. So I picked a kind of happy number in between. And I said, let's say that national marketing year average price falls down to a $5 number. Again, probably a similar story, no ARC or PLC payment support there. SCO on the flip side, that supplemental coverage option on the crop insurance side could prove to be some provide some big dollars when we have a low yield. Let's look at the soybean side for Vermont. Again, for 2022, running a 40 bushel average, a $14 national marketing year average price. Again, same story, probably no ARC or PLC support to help you out. If we move on to the 2023 guesstimate, again, I said let's bump down that bushel number. Hopefully we see something better than a 35 bushel, but let's say we see a 35 bushel instead of the 40 we used in the previous example. And let's move that marketing year average price down to $10.85. Again, we might be able to squeak out a little bit of dollars on the ARC County side. And on the PLC side, certainly no dollar support there due to the high marketing year average price. But again, that supplemental coverage option may come into play. Keep in mind that all of these scenarios can vary, and each situation is going to be different. I certainly am praying for big yields and high prices, and that we don't have to think about things like these ARC and PLC programs, but we do need to be protected, certainly if our house catches on fire, as they say. Again, I would encourage you to work with your crop insurance professional to pencil out the math here. Every situation is going to be different when it comes to risk management solutions. To sum up the ARC and PLC, let's go back to that risk management tightrope illustration. As I mentioned, ARC and PLC are free programs from FSA, and they do provide true disaster coverage. PLC is that price program, and ARC is a revenue, price times yield component. These programs are paid on a percentage of your base acres at FSA versus your planted acres on the crop insurance side, and they do use FSA yield information. As we indicated, by running the math, the possibility of ARC or PLC for 2022 and probably even 2023 is quite slim. Crop insurance, on the other hand, is government subsidized and provides higher price and yield support. And I would encourage you to work with your professionals there at Crop Growers to help you out. As we always say, there's no one size fits all to answer these questions. Every situation is going to be different. Have a great year, and please be safe out there. I'll turn things over to Nicole.
Good afternoon, everyone. Nicole Ingram here. Been working up in the Northeast as a marketing agent. Looking forward to explaining what you can prepare to have a valuable insurance discussion with your agent. Just want to say thanks to Alex and Debbie for bringing a lot of good information to the table that we can have as we go forward. So what to expect in a visit? Let's set our expectations to understand what topics we're going to discuss. We usually go through a risk assessment sheet. We're going to look at the cost of production, so we can understand how much is it costing to put this crop in the ground and take care of it. We're going to plan for the upcoming year. How many acres are you looking to put in the ground? Are we expanding the business? Has the business lost some acreage? We're also going to look at what the business goals are, both our current goals and our future goals. Are we looking to transition the business? Are we looking to partner? Anything that may have changed or may come up as a change. Once we've gone through and have a better understanding as to what's going on and what the plan is for the year and the upcoming years, we then kind of walk through a policy discussion. Here's where we figure out, how does the program work? What options do we have that might make some kind of decision where we're going to use SCO? We also then, from there, now that we know what the risk is and what the policy has to offer, we're going to have a policy level discussion. From here, this is where we combine everything together and see where's our risk and where does the program help to protect that risk. So how can you prepare for your visit. Having this information ahead of time really drives having a valuable conversation with your agent. Having yields. If you're a current producer, that just means last year's yields. If you're new to crop insurance altogether, ideally 4 years of yield, if not, whatever you have available so that we can get a better idea of where we stand. If you're a brand new producer altogether, it's a great thing to bring up so that we can talk to see what makes the most sense for you. We then are going to look at what our revenue goals or our feed goals are. On a dairy, we have to have enough feed to feed our cows. Plain and simple. So we figure out how many head of cattle we have, how much feed need for the year, and go from there. On a revenue goal, we need to figure out what's going to pay our bills. How many bushels do you want to see in production that we have to sell? Do we have a bin that we're trying to fill? If you have your ARC or PLC election from FSA, like Debbie mentioned, there's the form. You can call FSA and let them know that, hey, can you email over a copy to that and my agent? You can also just give them permission for the agent to ask, hey, can you email that form over to me? If we have that, we can have the conversation already knowing what you have elected so that we can avoid any of those penalties. From there, cost of production is a really important piece of the puzzle to have. When it comes to discussing our cost of production, everything that I have listed out on the slide is a great place to start. Between our fuel, land rent, spray, but we also need to remember that your time spent in the seat of that tractor matters. You need to be honest when it comes down to your cost of production. The real question that you can kind of ask to decide if that number is anywhere close to honest, if I had to hire this done, what would it cost me? Or if someone was going to hire me out to do this for them, what am I going to charge them? That way you're actually bringing what your cost in time, your maintenance and your machinery, truly to the table of this conversation. When it comes to having a conversation with your agent, there are 3 key goals that we are really trying to reach. We want to make sure with crop growers that we're writing the correct policy, not just any policy to get out the door. We want to make sure we've taken your risk and decided, have we hit the 3 key goals that we look for to cover in every policy? We want to reach those production goals. We want to make sure we have enough production to feed the cows. If not, we're going to have something to be able to buy some feed. We want to cover that cost of production. We want to take the time to know, hey, if it's going to cost me $900 an acre, I have $900 in coverage. So if I fall below my production, something's going to help me finish paying that seed bill, that fertilizer bill, to pay for the machinery and the maintenance on it. If we're able to do 1 and 2, reaching those production goals and covering that cost of production, the 3rd one comes really easy, and that's protecting your equity in the business. When we protect your equity in the business, we're minimizing the amount that you would have to borrow to pay any of those bills in a bad year. Doing that ensures that you can be here year after year. Crop Growers is a network of trusted advisors. We have knowledgeable partners like Watts to help us bring all the information that Debbie and Alex presented today to you and make the decision that is right for your farm depending on the risk. We are committed to maximizing revenue while reducing risk. If you have any questions about crop insurance or about your policy, please reach out to your local agent. With that, I will turn it back over to Kyle.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and we will start asking some questions. So as a reminder, if you have any questions, feel free to text chat them in using our questions tab, and we will get them going. So I think the first question I think I'm going to ask is for Alex. Alex, if you had a crystal ball when it came to Farm Bill 2023, what do you think is going to happen? Is this going to be an on-time farm bill? Is there going to be, other than kind of the regulatory spending that I think we're going to be seeing because of the Republicans in control, or is it probably going to be a kind of same as for in terms of crop insurance from the previous farm bill?
So it's a great question, and there are several aspects to it, but I'm going to start with a very important disclaimer. I don't know. And I think that that's a point that a lot of folks can lose early on in the debate, that it's very difficult to predict what direction this is going to take. But you asked a fair question, so let me offer you some fair speculation. We believe that it is the intention of all parties to try and get a farm bill across the line. And yesterday, with the committee assignments and the announcement of committee chairman on the House side, we do have a few glimmers of hope, particularly for agriculture. First, the chairman of the House Budget Committee is a gentleman named Jody Arrington. He comes from Lubbock, Texas, and he has cotton in his veins. He represents an extremely dense agricultural district. He is a cotton farmer himself and has a strong interest in agriculture. And there are a few folks in the country that have benefited more from support from agricultural programs like those laid out in the Farm Bill than his constituents. So while there's no question this gentleman is a budget hawk, he has a strong interest in supporting his own constituents and then agriculture in general. That's a bit of good news. The other piece of good news is Mr. Smith from Missouri was named the House Ways and Means Committee chairman. He also is a farmer himself, fourth generation. He also represents an incredibly densely agricultural district. So you've got the two folks that are most personally responsible for the purse strings going into the next Congress on the House side with strong agricultural interests. And the difficult dance that they're going to have to do is, yeah, we're serious budget hawks. Yes, we need to get spending reined in, but not agriculture. Agriculture is fine. Then the last farm bill, we spent about $85 billion a year on the farm bill. That was our projection in 18. We actually ended up spending about $110 billion a year on it. But again, most of that spending was on nutrition. So I think there will be a robust debate, and I think that there will be some pressure, particularly on nutrition programs. Everyone you talk to in the agriculture community, from Congressman Thompson all through the committee staff, seem to feel like any interest in cutbacks in crop insurance are going to be strongly resisted, and that there may be less budget pressure on this farm bill than we might have thought, now that we know that the folks who will be making those decisions on the House side look to have strong agricultural interests themselves. I also tell you on the Senate side that Senator Stabenow and Senator Bozeman both have made it very clear that they intend to get this farm bill done on time. And everyone seems to be thinking that an aggressive hearing season this spring, taking off primarily in March, once they've got some basic committee business underway, could result in a bill that goes out for review during the August recess, and shortly after return to the August recess, their current projected timeline is around a floor debate sometime in September. This could also be a really interesting floor debate because under the new House rules, any individual can propose an amendment on a bill on the floor, something that's been very difficult to navigate with farm bills over the last several, all the way back to the 2008 farm bill, which failed on the floor as a result of amendments. Sorry, kind of a long answer, but again, I'll circle you back to the original answer. I don't know. It's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, great. So I think this is a question that can be, I think, for all three of our presenters. So we talked a lot about corn and soybeans. What about our specialty crop producers that kind of use the specialty crop insurance programs and things of that nature? So I'll kind of toss it out there for whoever, Debbie, Nicole, or Alex wants to kind of go down that road a little bit. So
maybe Nicole should start.
yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely take a crack at that. In terms of specialty crops, we're kind of going to follow through the same meeting expectations. We have programs, whole farm, or depending on the specific crop within that county, we may have a policy or have the ability to do written agreements. But we have to understand your business first. We have to understand what is your risk potential, what is that cost of production, and move from there into what policies we have available and how they can fit together with the crop or the specialty crop that we're working with. Kind of the outline for it is the same, and we have those tools, we have that knowledge within the team and the ability to cover those things, but without knowing what exact specific crop, we would probably have to meet with your local agent. So one of the easiest ways to do that is reach out to the local farm credit office, and they can get you in touch with your agent in your area that would gladly go through everything. And I mean, we have, I think, over 19 agents now within the territory that we serve. We have a lot of years of experience on the team. So somebody along the lines, I know, knows the answer to the question that you have to ask. So just find us and ask it, and we will bring you the knowledge we have.
I'll take a run just to add a little bit to that. We are looking at increased emphasis on specialty crops, especially going into this new Farm Bill debate, but there are some pretty reasonable programs available for specialty crops today. Apples in particular have a dedicated program that's looking to see some expansion and improvement over the course of the next year. It's been a wild ride as RMA has attempted to make revisions to that program. Some of those positive, others not so much, and those have been pushed back, but we can expect them, we're told, for the 2024 crop year. In addition to that, some tools that have been available for other crops, things like supplemental coverage option and enhanced coverage option, are expected to become available for crops like apples and other fruit crops. We also have heard increased discussion among the folks involved in this debate, particularly our friends at Western Growers, sort of a consortium of irrigated specialty crops in California and the West, and then also some folks from the U.S. Hort associations talking about improved coverage options, both within the Farm Bill itself and then also within the crop insurance program. So it is one of those things where the program availability offerings change every year, and it's your crop growers, crop insurance specialists that'll be able to answer those specific questions.
Great. Debbie, is there, I know some people are wondering a little bit more detail about your analysis on ARC and PLC. Is there anything else that you would like to add to that, or kind of go in a little bit more detail?
I guess as far as specialty crops, I don't know that there's anything particular there to hit on. I mean, really, if you think about when those programs were developed, and it was initially back in 2008, and that moved on to 2014. Initially, it was a one-time election. It was locked in stone for 5 years, and then in 2018 that election became an annual election as opposed to a one-time election over a 5-year period. And so having an annual election is a good thing. However, we're in a high price market, which is great for the producer's pocketbook, and those are programs really were intended to be disaster programs, and we don't, that support is not there currently. I know Alex will talk to you, there's certainly discussion of increasing those marketing year average prices. There's all, certainly both sides of the fence if that's a good thing or a bad thing. And so we'll see how that shakes out, but there are definitely lots of crop insurance opportunities available, things like that supplemental coverage option, the enhanced coverage option, other programs specific to like apples, and some catch-all programs like Whole Farm that brings all of those specialty crops into one umbrella. They may not fit for everyone, but there are options out there if you have a need, and that's where your crop growers professional can come in and help you identify what options are on the table and what makes sense for your operation.
Great, thank you. Nicole, we have a potential customer asking, what's the best way to get a hold of a crop growers agent and set up a meeting?
So definitely the easiest way. You can look on farmcrediteast.com. You should be able to find a contact us, and they can reach out and get a hold of Farm Credit, which will put you right into contact with crop insurance. If you happen to know or Google the local Farm Credit office in your area, give them a call, tell them that you're interested in crop insurance, and they can connect you right to whoever your local agent is. I don't know, Kyle, are there any additional resources you may know with Farm Credit that would easily connect them?
Nope, that's the best way is farmcrediteast.com or cropgrowers.com to contact us, or as you said, reach out to your local office in the area. We have 25 or 24 offices across 8 states here in the Northeast. So feel free to give us a call and we'll be able to direct you to the local agent in your area. So I think that pretty much wraps up all of our questions that we have. Alex, Debbie, or Nicole, is there any final thoughts before we close out this webinar, before we hit the top of the hour?
I just note that we're going to spend a lot of time with your agents trying to make sure that they have access to the most current information as it goes on. We talked about how this is going to be a winding road and sort of a long process between where we are today and a final bill. And you're going to want to stay informed. And we are meeting every week with the crop growers insurance agents to brief them on what's happening in DC and what is new and relevant, not just on the Farm Bill debate, but all of the issues in crop insurance. So if you have questions, they're a tremendous resource for you, and their information is going to be current, at least within the last several days, as we're doing training with them every single week.
Yeah, and I would just add to Kyle that the team there at Crop Growers is top notch. They have lots of great tools and resources to really dig in and do a dive, as Nicole mentioned, looking at that cost of production, how much money do you really need, how much revenue are you looking for, what options are available to you, and to help you maybe narrow down. There's so many options out there, but to help you narrow down to the top 2 or 3, and so that you can make some educated decisions for your operation moving forward. What you did last year or 5-10 years ago may not be the best solution as we move forward with all this new technology and new programs that have come up just within the last year. So refer to that team. So we wish you nothing but a great year and high prices and high yields, because that's what it's going to feed the population and what's going to make you money as well. Thank you for the opportunity.
Great. So just as a final reminder, everybody, all of our webinars, past, present, and future, will be posted to farmcrediteast.com/webinars, as well as any past webinars will be on our YouTube channel as well. Just simply search Farm Credit East and we will be one of the first to pop up. So with that, we will conclude, and I wish everybody a happy new year and a great rest of the day. Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.